Welcome into the Big 1-2 here on 365 Sports. Paul Catalina alongside JD Piquel. We're brought to you, of course, by Shorty's Pizza Shack. Look, game day locations in Waco can't get much better than Shorty's Pizza Shack. Great deals by the slice or whole pies, fantastic wings with the Sikkim sauce, and $4 Boone's Farm on Saturdays.
If you're not there, you're literally doing game day the wrong way.
Exactly.
Like, you're actually making a sin against a game day iconic tradition.
You've already ruined it from the beginning.
You're already down a couple touchdowns.
So if you're coming in, look, if you're an Iowa State fan watching the show, coming into Waco, Shorty's Pizza Shack, can't go wrong there for game day, for the night before game day, whenever you're here, Shorty's Pizza Shack. All right, JD, great week in the Big 12 this week. Really interesting things went on. Some good things, some bad things, some bad things for, let's first talk about the team going out, one of the teams going out of the Big 12 in Texas. They played an old foe from the SWC in Arkansas, which is going to be a new SEC foe, and it did not go well at all.
No, it did not go well in the slightest. And a week ago, it felt like Texas was back. That was the thing. I was like, hey, they got a quarterback, they got an offense. I'm doing chalk talks on how good Bijan Robinson is. He's going to win the Heisman. And then you go 8 for 15 if you're Hudson Card, throw for under 100 yards, have a horrific fumble. You look borderline useless offensively on the offensive line. Like, there were so many things about this game where you juxtapose it with the game a week ago against Louisiana, and you're like, is this the same team? The same team? Is this the same coach? They got the same players? I mean, Bijan Robinson, you need more production from him. I think he had like 69 yards rushing. Hudson Card had less than that passing. They made a switch, which was interesting. I don't know how good you feel if you're Casey Thompson now. You're like, okay, well, they just pulled Hudson Card after a great game, and he has a bad 3 quarters, and he's pulled. So it makes me feel like, okay, they must have not been in love with Hudson Card from the jump, but I mean, there's a lot of things to not like about Texas right now.
JD, I told you this last week when we were talking about it. I don't think that the Texas quarterback for next year is on the roster right now. I think that's probably – this looks like one of those transfer portal situations, and that's something that Texas never used to have to do is get into the transfer portal. They put things into the transfer portal. They didn't really grab things out of it. That's because that's not what they were, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I do think that that's going to be where they look, or it maybe is a freshman or something like that, or JUCO signee or something like that. They used to never have to do that, but – I don't think Steve Sarkisian is comfortable with either of these guys completely. That's why he can so quickly pull the trigger like that, because, again, he's not really all that enthralled with what they can do overall. So that's the problem with the quarterback position there. Is if he had a guy, he wouldn't be quick to say, like this week with Casey Thompson starting, oh, but Hudson Card's still going to play. No. If you've got 2, you've got none. If you've got 1, you've got 1. I've been told that a long, long time. If you've got 1, you've got 1. If you've got 2, you got none. You know, it's very rare that you have just 2 guys that are interchangeable. One person's usually better than the other, and you play the better one. Even if the other guy has potential, the better one's going to play. That's the great thing about sports is it's a meritocracy. So, you know, there's only one currency, and that's winning. So nobody does anything that's going to be counterproductive to winning for any kind of, you know, that's any kind of successful. So if there's no personality conflicts, there's none of that. It's like, are you the best person to help this team win? If you are, well, Steve Sarkisian can't make that decision because neither of those guys have shown him that they are. And he just has to play with the hand he's dealt right now.
Yeah, and if you look at, I mean, I think about, okay, what does this really mean for Texas long term? Like, is Casey Thompson going to come in and just change their whole season? Unless they know something that we don't, probably not. He would have won the job outright if he was really like that guy, right? And so I'm thinking it doesn't matter who they have at quarterback if they can't protect him. And we saw that multiple times in this game. I mean, the Texas offensive line, they have 4 guys back, 4 guys that have played a good amount of football on the offensive line, and they just couldn't do anything against the Arkansas defensive line. So whether it's Casey Thompson, whether it's Hudson Card, both sort of dual threats in their own right, kind of different flavors of dual threat, with Casey Thompson kind of being that more power runner and Hudson Card's kind of the elusive, make you miss guy in space. If they can't protect him up front, it's not going to matter who's throwing the ball for them.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of it, is he's who can work the best with the offensive line at the given moment because they've got issues there. Another team that has surprising amount of issues that, and look, Iowa's a good team, but I don't think Iowa State expected to lose that game that way, and Iowa's going to physically maul a lot of people this year. That's what Kirk Ferentz has built for a long time, is they're going to be good on both sides of the ball up front. They're going to be, you know, hardcore, run the ball down your throat, good tacklers, you know, that kind of stuff. They don't have, you know, this litany of Alabama-like playmakers in Iowa, but they've got good, strong, just corn-fed, angry dudes along both fronts. And Iowa State met that the other day, and Brock Purdy, shockingly enough, had to get pulled from that game. Iowa State fans might be a little bit nervous going ahead if Brock Purdy is going to get pulled. I mean, this is a 4-year starter at quarterback who's been nothing but consistent and good for them. But there is this kind of phenomenon sometimes with college football quarterbacks. And maybe it happens in other positions. Quarterback's just more noticeable. But I've seen it happen at Texas A&M a couple times. They hit their senior year, and that's all that they had to give. And they've peaked, and that's it. I don't think Brock Purdy has a big NFL future. I don't think he's that kind of guy. And he might have hit that peak. I think that would be concerning to Iowa State because they weren't good on offense against Northern Iowa. They weren't good on offense again last week, and they have weapons. I mean, Kohler, Brees Hall. I mean, they've got weapons, and Brock Purdy not really shaking up the universe just yet. And that was a hard one for fans in Ames to swallow, especially they thought they were going to finally get that monkey off their back in Iowa this week, and it didn't happen with extreme prejudice.
It happened in probably the worst way possible, too. To bench a guy like Brock Purdy, and we're going to look at it on the Chalk Talk, but there's a lot of interceptions out there where I don't really think it was on Brock Purdy 100%. There's one you can probably point to and say, yeah, poor decision. One was a tip pass. One hit his receiver in the hands. That was an interception. So, yeah, the stat sheet says 3 interceptions. If I'm Matt Campbell, though, why are you benching Brock Purdy? You're telling me you really have a better chance to get back into this game without Brock Purdy than you do with him? That was kind of a head-scratcher to me. But I really think Iowa exposed Iowa State in a lot of ways. And the message after that game to me was, okay, you take away the running game, take away Brees Hall, who had, I think it was like 16 carries for somewhere in the range of 70 yards. They don't have a lot else to offer on offense because they build so much off of that running game. So Kolar, Allen, both great presences over the middle. I think they need someone, maybe they need more from Tariq Milton, or they need somebody else who can be a burner for them on the outside that's going to be that home run threat. Because when you take away their horses up front, like Iowa did, Iowa really bullied them offensively. They're not able to ask Brock Purdy to be that dude to just put the team on his back and make it happen. He's a phenomenal player, but I think we talked about it in previous episodes. There is so much expected of Iowa State before the season started. And now they are on this pedestal and under this spotlight, under this microscope, to where we're looking at them saying, Brock Purdy, you're very good for what they ask you to do, but in the grand scheme of being an elite college football quarterback, I have a harder time buying into that. So, I mean, there's a lot ahead of Iowa State. I think there's probably 1 or 2 more losses left on their schedule. Oklahoma's going to be tough. TCU's going to be tough. I'm not so sure Baylor won't be tough with all they have defensively if they could take away the run. So a lot to be desired still of Iowa State. And Brock Purdy will still be the guy for them going forward, but I don't like his benching. I wasn't a fan of that.
No, and look, there's another thing I want to get to. There's some nice wins in the Big 12 this week, but TCU over Cal was a good win. TCU fought back in that one, but there are a couple of games here that are wins, but they're a little bit head scratching and that you should be concerned. Texas Tech only wins by 6 over Stephen F. Austin. Needs all 4 quarters to do that. Kansas State needed all 4 quarters to beat Southern Illinois after they had a really good win over Stanford, who just got USC's coach fired this week. We're the last straw on the back. Oklahoma State struggles against Tulsa and needed a massive fourth quarter to win that game. I mean, they scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, but Oklahoma State's got issues. They're all wins, and there's no such thing as a bad win. But there are things to concern when they're not separating from some of these teams that you would think they'd be separating from.
Absolutely. I think the biggest emergency button that I'm pressing if I'm anywhere around the Big 12, Tyler Shuck. 1 touchdown, 2 picks. You got to look better against a team like Stephen F. Austin. And he was supposed to be the answer for them. He looked like the answer a week ago against Houston, looked really sharp. And so for him to come out and have such a lackluster performance, my heart's beating really fast if I'm Matt Wells right now, because that's the guy that your job depends on. I mean, you brought this guy in really to save your job because you need a great quarterback play, you need great offensive play, and for Tyler Shuck to kind of swing and miss in this game, 12 for 22, you got to be more efficient, you got to be more effective against a team like Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah, Kansas State did. I mean, Skylar Thompson got hurt early in that game, and it took Will Howard a second. But Chris Kleiman keeps talking about how he's confident in Will Howard, and we'll see. Will Howard got thrown into the fire as a true freshman last year. In a COVID year and all those things. So maybe if he has those starter reps, he'll be better throughout the in the weeks ahead. But that was a little bit concerning that Southern Illinois was that close. TCU and Cal was a great game. It was a really good game, back and forth. Zach Evans is a dude, and we knew that when he was getting recruited. Zach Evans' biggest enemy is Zach Evans. He's got to mature and grow up. If he can continue to do that, the Big 12 is not going to like playing him every week.
Oh, if he can be the bell cow for them. I mean, I'm just looking at the stat sheet here. 22 carries, 190 yards, 8.6 a clip. You can average 8 yards a carry against anybody. I don't care if it's Cal. I don't care if it's Oklahoma. That's really impressive at the Division I level, at the FBS level to do that. So Zach Evans, like you said, if he can hit his stride, if he can be someone who's dependable and reliable for TCU, he doesn't need to rip off 190 a game, but if you can be serviceable in that 90 to 100 yards, which is still a lot to ask, but Zach Evans is capable of it, and then have Max Duggan be the dual threat that he is. He had 71 yards rushing in this game, which I really like that number for him. I don't like 19 carries for him, but that backfield between Evans and Duggan, they're going to make a lot of noise. I think they're going to honestly be in that title game between them and Oklahoma.
Yeah. Kansas gave Coastal Carolina all they wanted for a little bit.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they've got depth issues, and Coastal Carolina is a good team and wound up winning by 27. There were, in the blowout category this week, Oklahoma just threw Western Carolina in the wood chipper 76-0. Baylor did exactly what they were supposed to do against Texas Southern 66-7. And West Virginia beat Long Island University 66-0. So
there you go.
Those were all, there's nothing worth really talking about for those games because they went exactly how they were. Do we know anything about Oklahoma's defense because they pitched a shutout on a team that should have pitched a shutout on? No. Do we know anything more about Jarrett Dagey? Maybe he gets more confident. I think sometimes those games, these guarantee games, can help. For example, Gary Bohannon throwing the deep ball knows how he should throw it. Now, can he complete those passes against Iowa State's defense? Can he complete them against Oklahoma's defense and so on down the line of the Big 12? That remains to be seen, but we know he knows he can do it now in a game, and I think that's at least big for confidence.
Totally. I mean, to do it in a live setting, 11-on-11 against another team, it's good for your confidence, good for your stats, honestly. And there really should have been more blowouts around the Big 12. Like Texas Tech, Kansas State both should have taken care of business. There should be a lot less to talk about with both of those teams. So honestly, if you want to look at a bright side, I mean, you took care of business. You did what you were supposed to do for those teams. So hats off to them. And I mean, you survive another week, I guess.
Yeah. And look, Oklahoma State and Tulsa, probably not a surprise to me. Tulsa's, been pretty good with Phil Montgomery. They are the Tulsa, though, that like throughout their history, and they'll have 2 or 3 good years, and then it's just kind of like the recruiting class bottoms out for a year or so, and then they tick back up. And we'll see what happens with Tulsa down the line. But they've lost a lot of players. But they, that was not surprising. But again, Oklahoma State, I was on the Spencer Sanders bandwagon. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of off of it now.
Really?
Yeah. It's got you got to get better sooner or later, and he's still they're just kind of stuck in neutral in Stillwater right now, and Spencer Sanders is certainly part of that. So I'm kind of off that Spencer Sanders bandwagon for now. He's a remarkable athlete, but he's not been able to put it together consecutively or stay healthy. So
yeah, it's tough. And I'm glad you said that about Tulsa because they gave him problems. I mean, a year or two ago, I think it was. Tulsa's a solid team, but for Spencer Sanders and for Oklahoma State, you just have to be better. Similar to what I said about Tyler Shuck. Spencer Sanders to throw an interception, be 15 for 26, under 200 yards passing. You just need more from your guy. I know he's coming off of the COVID vacation, if you will. Maybe COVID vacation is the wrong word to use. He's coming off of not playing in their opener, so he's still getting back into a rhythm. Still think there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of upside with just how athletic he is and how much talent he has, but they're going to ask him to do a lot. And I'm with you. I don't think he's necessarily the guy to take them as far as they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, when we come back, obligatory realignment segment, and of course we have real news again, JD.
I love it.
And realignment this week, they're coming. 4 new teams. We'll talk about that next. This is the Big 1-2 on 365 Sports, brought to you by Shorty's Pizza Shack.